Your friend doesn't text back for 2 days. You decide they're inconsiderate, cold, probably never valued the friendship. But when you don't text back for 2 days, you were overwhelmed, you had a deadline, you meant to reply, you really did. And anyone who doesn't understand that is being unfair. But the real answer is far stranger. You just demonstrated one of the most well-documented biases in all of social psychology, and you almost certainly didn't notice it happening. This is the error that shapes every workplace conflict you've ever had. It's the invisible hand behind most dating misunderstandings. It is the quiet killer of nearly every friendship that ever died over an unreturned text. And the most unsettling part is that your brain is running this error right now on someone you know, and you cannot feel it. Here is what is actually happening inside your head. When you watch another person do something, snap at a cashier, miss a deadline, show up late, your brain performs a split-second calculation. It takes their action and attaches it to who they are. They snapped because they're rude. They missed the deadline because they're lazy. They showed up late because they don't respect your time. The behavior becomes evidence of character. This is automatic. It feels like perception, not interpretation. It feels like you're just seeing what's there. But when you do the exact same thing, when you snap at a cashier, you haven't slept in 2 days and you just got devastating news. When you miss a deadline, 3 other people dropped emergencies on your desk and something had to give. When you show up late, traffic was a nightmare and your alarm didn't go off and your morning fell apart before you even touched your coffee. In your own case, the behavior is fully explained by the situation, the context, the things that happened to you. And that also feels automatic. That also feels like you're just seeing what's there. Your brain is running 2 completely different operating systems, one for you, one for everyone else, and you have zero awareness of the switch. In 1977, a psychologist at Stanford named Lee Ross gave this phenomenon a name. He called it the fundamental attribution error. That word, fundamental, was chosen deliberately. This is not a quirk that shows up under specific conditions. It's a default setting, a cognitive baseline. The systematic tendency to explain other people's behavior as a reflection of their character while excusing your own identical behavior as a response to the situation. Ross argued that this error is the conceptual bedrock of social psychology itself. It is the lens through which you see every other person on Earth. But Ross was naming something that had been dramatically demonstrated years earlier. In 1967, 2 researchers at Duke University, Edward Jones and Victor Harris, ran what would become one of the most famous experiments in the history of psychology. The setup was deceptively simple. Participants walked into a lab and read an essay. The essay passionately supported Fidel Castro, the Cuban revolutionary leader. Now imagine being in that chair. You're reading strong, opinionated, persuasive prose, arguments stacked on arguments, conviction in every paragraph. Here's the twist. Some participants were told the essay writer had freely chosen to write a pro-Castro piece, total freedom. Others were told the exact opposite, that the writer had been randomly assigned the position. It was a coin flip, no choice, no personal conviction whatsoever. Then Jones and Harris asked a simple question. How much does this writer genuinely support Castro? If you're thinking rationally, the answer is obvious. When someone is assigned a position at random, the essay tells you absolutely nothing about their true beliefs. The situation fully explains the behavior. A rock could have been assigned that essay. But that is not what participants concluded. Even when they knew the position had been randomly assigned, they still rated the writer as somewhat pro-Castro. They still believed, at some level, that the person who wrote those words must mean them. The situation was screaming, "This means nothing," and their brains whispered back, "But look at what they wrote." This is the fundamental attribution error in its purest form. The behavior is right there, visible and concrete. The situation, the random assignment, the experimenter's instructions, the utter lack of any real choice, is abstract and invisible. Your brain trusts what it can see and discounts what it cannot. This is not a moral failing. It is a processing shortcut. And it works well enough most of the time that evolution never bothered to patch it out. But here is where things become genuinely disruptive to everything you think you know about other people. For decades after Ross named the error, psychologists assumed it was universal. Every human brain, they believed, makes this same miscalculation. It seemed like a law of cognition, as reliable as gravity. But then researchers started looking outside Western cultures, and the law began to crack. Richard Nisbett, a social psychologist at the University of Michigan, spent years comparing how people in Western and East Asian cultures explain behavior. What he and his colleagues found was remarkable and deeply humbling for anyone who assumed their own way of seeing was the only way. People raised in more collectivist cultures, cultures that emphasize group harmony, interdependence, and the importance of context, were significantly less likely to commit the fundamental attribution error. They were more likely to pause and consider situational factors when judging someone's behavior. They were more likely to hold back on definitive character conclusions until they understood the full picture. This changes everything. The error you're making, the one that feels like simply seeing reality, is not hardwired. It's learned. It's cultural. It's a habit of thought your environment taught you, which means it can be unlearned. The very fact that millions of people in different cultures see the world differently is proof that your default setting is not the only setting. It's just the one you never knew you had. And this brings us to the modern mirror, which is brutal. Because if you look at the environments where the fundamental attribution error flourishes most easily, you will find the digital spaces where you now spend the majority of your waking hours. Social media strips away context with ruthless efficiency. You see a stranger's angry comment, but not the divorce they're going through. You see a colleague's terse email, but not the meeting where their boss humiliated them 10 minutes before they hit send. You see a friend's vacation photos, but not the screaming fight they had with their partner 5 seconds after the camera was put down. The internet gives you behavior without situation, action without context, and your brain, running its default operating system, fills every gap by inventing character. This person is toxic. This person is showing off. This person is ungrateful. This person is a monster. You are not seeing people online. You are seeing fragments of behavior and assembling full human beings out of them, and you are almost certainly wrong about most of it. What makes this terrifying is not the error rate, it's the confidence. Every judgment arrives with a sense of clarity, of obviousness. He's obviously a narcissist. She's clearly manipulative. They're definitely the problem. Your brain doesn't flag these conclusions as guesses. It flags them as observations. The same pattern corrodes your closest relationships. A partner who seems distant isn't processing their own anxiety. In your mind, they're pulling away from you. A friend who cancels plans isn't drowning in their own responsibilities. They don't value your time. A coworker who snaps in a meeting isn't dealing with a medical crisis at home. They're hostile and unprofessional. Your brain takes the single most visible data point and builds an entire theory of who someone is around it, then treats that theory as confirmed fact. And the theories are almost always harsher than the truth, almost always more personal than the reality, almost always about you, even when nothing is about you at all. So what do you actually do with this? The first step is not to stop making the error. You cannot stop. It is automatic, fast, and deeply trained into your perceptual apparatus. What you can do is learn to catch it after it fires. The intervention is surprisingly simple, and it comes directly from the cross-cultural research itself. When you notice yourself forming a character judgment, he's selfish, she's rude, they don't care, ask yourself exactly one question. What situational factors could explain this behavior that I cannot see? You don't need to answer the question. You don't need to fabricate a sympathetic backstory for every person who frustrates you. You just need to hold open the possibility that an answer exists. This is not about giving people excuses. It's about restoring the context your brain stripped away by default. The mere act of asking the question activates the same cognitive machinery that people in more context-sensitive cultures use automatically. You are not changing who you are. You are temporarily borrowing a different way of seeing. The second step is even simpler, and it requires nothing but honesty. When you catch yourself explaining your own behavior, I was stressed, I didn't have time, the situation was complicated, Notice the asymmetry. Notice that you are extending to yourself the exact situational lens you denied to the other person. This isn't hypocrisy. It's an information asymmetry. You know your own context intimately, in granular detail. You don't know theirs. You cannot know theirs. The error isn't that you're kinder to yourself. It's that you're certain about them when you have almost no data. Noticing the asymmetry out loud, in your own head, is enough to start loosening its grip. The third step is the hardest. Do all of this slowly. You will fail at it constantly. You will catch yourself 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days after the judgment already hardened into resentment. That's normal. That's expected. The goal is not perfection. The goal is to shrink the gap between when the error fires and when you notice it fired. Over weeks and months, that gap narrows. And as it narrows, something quiet and profound happens. People become harder to hate, not because they changed, because you started seeing them as creatures of context, just like you. Every person you meet is drowning in invisible circumstances, invisible histories, invisible pressures that you will never know about. The fundamental attribution error convinces you that what you can see is all there is. But it never is. It's never even close. Lee Ross spent his entire career arguing that the fundamental attribution error is not just a laboratory curiosity. It shapes legal verdicts. It fuels political polarization. It convinces you that people on the other side of an argument are bad people, rather than people operating from a different set of experiences, incentives, and constraints they did not choose. The error makes the world feel simpler, cleaner, more legible. There are good people and bad people, and you can tell which is which by watching what they do for 5 seconds. The truth is far messier. Most behavior is situation wearing a human suit. Most of what you think you know about other people is fiction. Your brain wrote to fill a silence, and the most unsettling thing about the fundamental attribution error is not that you make it. It's that you will never know when you're wrong. You cannot rewind and watch the person's full context play out. You cannot audit your own judgments against objective truth. The error leaves no trace. It feels exactly like being right. Every person you've ever silently convicted of bad character, you convicted with full confidence. Some of them probably deserved it, but some of them didn't, and you will never know which is which. Your friend doesn't text back for 2 days. You decide they're inconsiderate, cold, probably never valued the friendship.